Welcome to Abstract Essay, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. She is an author, and of course, one of her advocacy is shifting conversations, empowering connections, and rewriting the rules of parenting and leadership. No other than Miss Katherine Sellery. Welcome, an abstract essay, Miss Catherine. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Love to. Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Daniel. Yeah, I've been working with parents for the last 20 something years and coaching and running training programs to support parents in being more effective with their conversations and conflict resolutions and to really build the relationship. So there's this really solid foundation for everybody in the family to feel seen, heard, and understood from their perspective. And I think a lot of that has to do with our conversation today, which is really focusing on emotional triggers and how parents are people too. Children are people too, but so are parents. And it's difficult for kids to manage their emotions. And sometimes it can be difficult for adults to manage their emotions. And in particular, they're exhausted and they're under-resourced and they're working and they're raising their kids and just so many things, right? That everybody's juggling, and we're gonna have trouble sometimes feeling completely resourced.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Catherine. Thank you for empowering us. So today let's talk about emotional triggers in parenting and leadership.
Yeah.
What was
Well,
the yes? Go ahead.
yeah, I was just thinking before we got on the air a little bit about a conversation I had with somebody who reached out to me this week. And
Yes.
it's a perfect example. In this case, it's a single parent, a mom with a 4-year-old who has relocated to a different state, is in the process of a divorce. And there are just so many pressures on both she and her son. And I guess she's trying to figure out, why is he mad all the time and he's so angry, and what can I do to help him? And there are all kinds of things we can do to help him. But first and foremost, we need to help her, right? We need to help
Yes.
the moms, the dads, the parents, the caretakers, the adults in the room, so that they're resourced, so that they're getting enough support, so that they can be the best version of themselves. And I think that actually we're at a crisis because everybody is working so hard to make ends meet. And I feel like there's just so many folks who feel under stress and difficult to have the space to handle disruptions in the way maybe that they really wish that they could.
Miss Catherine, our triggers often came from our own childhood or past leadership experiences. How can someone start to trace a current reactive pattern back to its original source?
I think that when we find ourselves in the same pattern, but perhaps the person that we're in the pattern with changes. So it had this face on it that time, but I know I'm in the same pattern, but it's now this person this time, and this person this time, and this person this time. So after a while, you begin to realize you're the common denominator, that the same pattern is unfolding with different people over the course of your life. But when you get right back to it, you find yourself in the same dance. And the dance is because your impressions from your upbringing and your childhood have, until they're addressed and we've released them, have, without even your consent necessarily, unwittingly, the patterns are so embedded that they appear in our dynamics and relationships. So that's, I guess, the number one way for us to recognize that, wow, is this about me? Am I the one who's bringing, this dynamic again and again and again and again in every relationship? And I just keep attracting the same person who's going to help me eventually see that, oh my gosh, I need to address the pattern because I'm the source of the pattern, or my upbringing is the source of the pattern. When we have that realization and we recognize, oh my God, it's from my family of origin and beyond, because I believe in transgenerational patterns that just keep passing down from generation to generation until they're actually addressed. So we recognize we're in the pattern. We can possibly think about, oh God, yeah, my mom did that, or my dad did that, or oh yeah, I remember that happening. And we can go back to different times in our own childhood where the same dance was unfolding. And we might have, in our experience as the young person, said to ourselves, I'll never do that. And then here we find ourselves in our adult experience actually having that same pattern unfold. So sometimes we can go back to the source in our own nuclear family. Not necessarily all the time, but I think that, most of us can go, yeah, I remember when that, oh yeah, right. And sometimes with the aid of a therapist or hypnosis, we're able to go back to the point of origin and recognize how this pattern is so familiar, and that we tend to go to the familiar because the familiar feels safe, even when it's destructive, even when it's not really safe. But familiarity feels like safety to the nervous system. And that's what I think is at the core of this.
Before we even have a conscious thought, our body signals a trigger that, let's say, already immune to our system. What is the most effective way to become aware of these physical cues and use them as a push button?
Yes, such a good point. Well, the pause is so important. And I think centering and grounding exercises. So when we begin to integrate the body, so Eugene Gendland, who started the work that I am most familiar with Gendland, he said that, the body holds the score. So basically that work that came out of this IFS and somatic all originated with Gendland. And basically there's something in us that's arising. And when we're bigger than what's bugging us, and when we are present, self in presence, if we're self in presence, it means that my sense of who I think I am, or what I think of as who I am, is expanded. It's large, and it's able to hold all of it. And with that consciousness, we're able to be present to whatever is arising without identifying with it as that's who I am. Does that all make sense?
Makes sense, Miss Catherine. In both parenting and leadership, we have authority but must foster independence. How does the trigger of losing control manifest in both contexts, and what is
Hmm.
the healthier way to frame our role?
Such a good, yeah, point that in both of our venues, whether it's our work venue or our home life, we can experience this being triggered. And this idea of control, or the absence of control, or having problems with authority, or continuing to have a sense of autonomy and authority, whether this or that venue. I hope I'm answering the question. But from my perspective, our agency should never be in question. So, regardless of the circumstances, we continue to make the choice. And we continue to be in touch with the fact that we have our own agency to choose to be, if you will, in a situation where we find ourselves being asked to do things that are not our preference. What comes to mind is, as I think you and I have discussed in the past, a lot of my work came from NVC and training with Marshall Rosenberg. And the nonviolent communication world is a world in which We're always trying to meet our needs. The context of everything is that behavior is needs-based. And when I'm doing this behavior or that behavior, either that behavior is a reflection of my needs being met, or the behavior is a revelation that I am not meeting my needs. And when I can't meet my needs, I appear to be really struggling on the surface. So if I'm in a situation, and there was an example I remember with a school teacher, and she was working in a school district, and they had, as was the case with Marshall Rosenberg, required that there be grades, and really struggled with this because it wasn't as though everybody came in at the same level. Some kids came in here, some kids came in here, and Marshall would say, I would be more than happy to tell you where this kid who came in at this level is now, and that they have worked hard and progressed, and I can explain to you how much improvement they've made. And the one that came in here, how much they made. But if you ask me to give grades, a grade isn't a fair measure because it doesn't take into consideration all of the vagaries of where each child in the classroom started. So one of the teachers was having this problem as well, feeling really uncomfortable with this static system that didn't reflect the nuance of the classroom. And yet she stayed and she continued to work in the system that she had problems with. And Marshall would say to her, well, I guess what we can do is we can celebrate the needs of yours that are met by having a job that produces an income, that gives you the safety and security, and we can mourn and we can grieve the needs of yours that are not being met. And when that balance shifts so that the needs that are being met are not higher than the needs that are not being met in that position, that's when we take action. That's when we start to change it. In the meantime, we celebrate the needs of ours that are met, and we mourn the needs of ours that are not met. And we learn how to be present to what's activated within us through this outer world experience. So the outer and the inner begin to have a relationship where we're present to what our outer world is, and we're recognizing that it can catalyze internally different feelings, but we don't identify with the feelings as that's who I am. I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm hurt. But something in me is sad, mad, and hurt. And I, as the presence that I am, can be with these aspects of myself and present to what's being experienced by this part of me, so that I'm honoring all that arises, and not from a agendized perspective of, oh, I'm going to be, for this feeling and against this one, but just present to all of it. And as we notice with our needs and that shifting equation, we begin to take action and make the changes when that time is right.
Interesting, Miss Catherine. Interesting indeed. And when a child or employee brings us a problem or triggers is often to immediately solve it for them. How do we shift from being the fixer to being a coach in these emotionally changed moments?
So nobody really wants other people to take over and become the fixer. I think that's kind of embedded in the way you stated the question. And I actually work with parents all the time around this idea of, when you fix that problem, what you're doing is you're robbing that child of the opportunity to feel how capable and competent they are. So empowering your child is being with them and having a process where you can really engage in a collaborative problem-solving model that they are leading. And the same thing would apply to the workplace. When somebody fixes, it doesn't actually give the employee the opportunity to begin to recognize and to have the power to be able to discover, I'm capable and competent of finding my own solutions. The better coach or the better employer is the one that really says, if you come to me with a problem, you better be bringing a solution too. And we can talk about both. And through that conversation and collaboration, we may come up with a whole different solution. But it's through that combination, both with children as well as with adults, that all of us experience a sense of capability, competency, and agency, that we are able to think through the problems that we encounter.
Miss Catherine, a child's tantrum or an employee's underperformance can feel like a direct reflection of our worth. How do
Yeah.
we disentangle their behavior from our identity as a good parent or effective leader?
Oh, it is a core. It's one of the core problems with parenting, is that, and it can also be with the workplace, that parents at stages can begin to feel like their children are their possessions, or their children are a reflection of them. And there's the absence in that case of recognizing that your children are rightfully needing to, at the right point in time, separate and individuate, and that we are with them in their journey from, child all the way through, to support in this individuation process. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have our differences of opinion, and we might find behaviors that this individuated, growing child, adult, teen is experiencing, and we may have opinions about those behaviors. But as long as we stay in our lane, at least we're not adding to the level another degree of complexity, that we have mistakenly made them a reflection of us, and that we're embarrassed or ashamed of their behavior because it makes us feel less good about ourselves. So that's really, really important in parenting, to be able to be with a child who's really upset and not start making it about, you've got to calm down right now because people are looking at me and what a bad mom I am. Like, what is that narrative about? No, I'll be with you. I see you're really upset right now, and that you're very disappointed that this thing didn't pan out, and you're not sure how to manage all the feelings that are arising, but you're not alone in this. And I'm here with you. And we can breathe together, and then you can start to do some of the steps that are called co-regulating. We can co-regulate with our children and help them gain composure again. And they can then become in command of themselves. When anyone is so emotionally wound up, they literally are disconnected from their frontal lobes, which is where the executive function part of the brain is. They're not thinking. The logic is out the window. The emotions have flooded the nervous system. They need support, which is not judgment, guilt trips, shaming about how they're making you look bad. It has nothing to do with you. I mean, it does only insofar as it is our job as leaders, as well as parents, and the leadership role we play there, to be teaching the skills so that everyone learns how to regulate their emotions. Things that are as simple as name it to tame it. Just learning the words to be able to have an expanded vocabulary, to be able to name what's happening internally. And when you do that, it diffuses. So there are so many steps in emotional regulation, but that's one of the easiest and simplest. And yet, I believe that Brene Brown's research revealed that most people, adults included, children included, have 5 words only to explain their inner experience. And she recommended 30. And there's a list that she has that I also have, that I use with my trainings, that are the words that help people. The more nuanced I can be to explain my inner experience and what's going on for me, the more impactful it is in terms of just dissipating high emotion.
How can we hold the tension of being both authoritative, and compassionate are for both demanding and supportive without being triggered by the apparent contradiction, Miss Catherine.
Yeah. So walking, the razor's edge essentially is the capacity to be both I'm not okay with this, and yet I understand how you're going through so much. So there's both the I'm not okay and my compassion and empathy about what you're going through. And yet this has got to change. So if we have it in our mind that both are present in us and both can be true, then we can bring that where, this isn't okay. Like, let's say in the context of a home, you know, when we're really upset and we destroy things, I'm not okay with it. I can appreciate how upset you were. And I can also see how just terrible you feel about it. And my objective here is not to make you feel worse about it, but my objective here is to say that we've got to find more skills and we have to work on this in order to have you better prepared when these high moments of emotion arise, for you to be with it, present to it, and not overwhelmed by it. And that would again apply, that conversation could apply in any context. You can also be at work where somebody is potentially, let's say, going through a lot of emotional upset. And we can have compassion and understanding. We might even be prepared to have certain behaviors that we would otherwise not be okay with and give more latitude. But of course, not forever. There comes a point where we do say, look, I'm terribly upset that I'm going to have this conversation with you, and yet I need to have it. I'm upset about it because, you're such a good, important person in this organization. And at the same time, I have so much empathy for what you're going through in your personal life. And I also have a responsibility to be on task. And we're not right now. So, that kind of a conversation is holding a line, not with power over, not with the, heavy handedness. I think it's going to work better this way. And I think you're going to have a more positive outcome, because what we know when you use a heavy hand is that it activates retaliation, rebellion, and resistance. And this is well proven. Thomas Gordon, who's researched this, is based on, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times because of the understanding that power over, where the other person feels completely like you have one choice, it's my way or the highway, and just do it. And whatever is coming up for the other person not only is not seen, heard, and understood from their perspective, it's marginalized, it's invisible, it doesn't matter. It activates retaliation, rebellion, and resistance in anyone of any age, in any context. It's not effective. There are many forms of power. And in that context, I would say it is the least effective form of power. Power with is more powerful than power over every single time.
Interesting it is, Miss Catherine. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, people, because my Abstract Essay is already in 5th season. Abstract Poetry in 2nd season, and my Book 101 review in 5th season too. Comedy 101 in 2nd season, and my Food 101 in 5th season as well. Geography 101 in 4th season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in 4th season, as well as my Movie 101 review and Music 101 in its 4th season as well, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in 2nd season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Catherine, if you could recommend one daily practice to someone to build their self-awareness to reduce their reactive action to their kids or to their employee, what would it be?
No, so lovely. I think the easiest practice to implement is where we recognize that there's something arising and we pause. When you begin to feel something arising, pause. And then, I close my eyes and I sit with my feet on the floor and my hands on the table. and I take a moment to just ground. So when that big thing is arising and I do that, and then I say, I'm noticing my feet are being supported by the earth. I'm seated and I'm supported by the chair. My hands are resting on the table. All around me, I'm experiencing support and recognizing that as I take my attention inside, that there are aspects looking for my presence. And as I take a breath and I hold it and release it, I'm able to turn toward all of it and be present without losing myself in it. And that little practice right there, what was that? Maybe, 20 seconds. It's a way to get bigger than what's bugging you. Getting bigger than what's bugging us is really the whole game. The minute that we begin to reset our sense of self as presence, as opposed to my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions. I have feelings, thoughts, and emotions, but that's not who I am. And when I'm not identified with them and I can hold space for them, I can be with all of it and I don't collapse into it. And so that is an exercise, very short, that I hope all of your listeners are able to implement. And if they're looking for more, please, you've been so kind to have the website there, katherinesellery.com. And you can go to the work-life balance side, or you can go to the Conscious Parenting Revolution side. And if you go to the CPR site, we have a family lifeline. And you can join the family lifeline community. It's free. It's there to provide the lifeline that we all occasionally need, because, things don't always go our way, and that's okay. It's okay as long as I can just be with it and surf the ocean, surf the wave, not let it overcome me.
Miss Katherine Sellery, thank you so much for your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And so can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yes, absolutely. So if you would like to, you can go to freeparentingbook.com and you can download my Amazon bestseller, 7 Strategies to Keep Your Relationship with Your Kids from Hitting the Boiling Point. And I hope that, it provides you with some strategies and support in all of your venues.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Katherine Sellery, because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering best-selling books to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Miss Katherine, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for all you do, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.